Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, everyone. So tonight we'd like to discuss about our summary of my Ántonia novel by Willa Cather. So the group members of group 2 are: the first speaker is Aprila Rahmayani, the second speaker is Siska Febriana Sitompul, the third speaker is Aprila Aurahmi, the fourth speaker is Meysha Firdaus Loeth, and the last speaker is Salsabila Ismael. For the first speaker, Aprila Rahmayani, time is yours.
Okay, thank you. I will talk about chapter 1 till 10. The chapter 1, almost 3 years after his move to the Black Hawk, Jim and his grandparents decide to leave the farm in the for a town. His Jim's grandfather becomes the deacon of the new Baptist church. His grandmother holds dinners for church function and for farmers coming into town. James began attending the school in town and quickly adjusts to the company of his new classmates. James questions Ambrose Ántonia whenever Ambrose comes to town, but Ambrose is stern and says the Howard family who also used to live on a farm. Uh, After the Harlings cooks leave them, James' grandmother convinces Mrs. Harlings to hire Antonia. They do and intend to pay Antonia well, including an allowance for her clothing. And chapter 3, with her warm personality and easy way, Antonia is right at home among the Harlings, and she soon settles into a regular routine. Jim is jealous of her immediate admiration for Charlie, but he is happy to see her again and spends more time at this. That's all from me. Thank you. I'm back to May.
Okay, thank you, Aprilia. We move to the next speakers, Siska. To Siska, time is yours.
Okay, thank you so much, May, for this opportunity. So I will talk about chapter 4 till chapter 6. So the chapter 4, it's them and have an amazing them. Looks for Mrs. Thomas, the dressmaker. Lena don't want to marry Nick or any other man. Lena invites Antonia to come to her place at Mrs. Thomas, but Antonia says that Mrs. Harling does not like that. Lena lived in the Norwegian ceremony week. The Sunday Lena appears at the church after the last hymn had been sung. Ola slipped out to the hitch bar and lifted Lena on her horse, which is not expected to do as a married man. Crazy Mary, his wife, darted out from the group of women and shouting horrible at Lena lingered. Lena says she never made anything to the married man with her eyes. If he hangs around and I can order him, it ain't her prairie. And then chapter 5 says that Lena came back to Black Hawk. The boys' home was the best hotel on the Burlington where Tiny Soda works. The traveling men were generous. They gave her handkerchief and gloves and a ribbon and striped stockings and many bottles of perfume and cakes of scented soap that she bestowed some of them on Lena. Lena's brother Chris wanted to give their mother a Christmas present, which is a handkerchief with her initial in the corner of it. Lena got homesick and cried while she walked up the windy street. And then the last chapter is the chapter 6. It is said that winter comes down savagely over a little town on the prairie. On Saturday nights, Mrs. Harling used to play the old operas every Saturday night. Was like a party. Antonia bought her sewing in her mother's claim that the Harling's house seemed a home to her. Antonia liked stories to people. There was a basic harmony between Antonia and her mistress. They both had strong and independent natures. So that's all that I can tell. Thank you, May. I will give.
Okay, thank you, Siska. we move to the next speakers, Aprila Aurahmi.
Okay, well, I will at present chapter 7 until 9. Okay, we start from chapter 7. The only break in the long winter came in March, when Blah, the Arnold, and a girl pianist came to Black Hawk. The townspeople gathered at the boys' home hotel to listen in. Suddenly, Antonia, Lena, and Tini was open, so they joined the dancing with the men in the convention hall. Chapter 8. That June, three Italians named Venice came to Black Hawk from Kansas City to teach dancing. They set up a dancing pavilion while in town. Antonia and the other hired girl were like pavilion, which were as gymnasts, a place where the girl could wear their new dress, and where one could love heartily without reproach. They then with the son of a rich family, unless captor is 9. Jim noticed the young men are more interested in the high girl than the perfect city girl. Jim realized the sacrifice and struggle of the high girl make them even more beautiful. Jim looked back as an adult, realizing that because the high girl made them a rich family. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Aprila. We move to the next speakers is me, Meysha. So I will present chapter 10 till 12. So in the chapter 10, Antonia went out from Mr. Harling's house and moved to work to the cutter so she could be out a lot in the afternoon. In the chapter 11, the cutter owned by Wick Cutter, who was a money lender. He was one of the facet of Black Hawk businessmen. He married Mrs. Cutter, who was a terrifying looking person. In the chapter 12, after went to live with the Cutters, Antonia seemed just care about nothing but picnics and parties. Jim still sitting in a Black Hawk while Charlie Harling was already at Annapolis. So is that all for from me? Thank you. We move to the next speakers, the last speakers, Sarah. To Sarah, time is yours.
Okay, I'm Sarah. I'm gonna read the chapter 13 into chapter 15. Chapter 15. James finds his grandmother crying one day, and he guessed correctly she knew of his secret behavior. He promised to stop, although he claimed there is nothing wrong with going to the dance or with the people who attend. Without the dance, he is bored and lonely despite devoting time to studying to go ahead for college in the fall. Friends say that Mrs. Holling doesn't understand why Jim prefers the country girl to the town girls. And friends believe Jim romanticized the hired girls by putting a kind of glamour over them. Jim surprised everyone by giving a powerful speech at his commencement. Antonia said it is better than any lawyer in the town could give and wishes her father could have heard it. On the chapter 14, Jim now is driven to move to the upstairs room of his house and focus on his studies and preparation for college. He took only one real break, and that was a trip to the river with Antonia, Tini, Lena, and Hannah Hansen. Jim swims in the river he realized he will miss when he goes away, and the girls arrive with a wagon. The plan to collect elderflowers to make wine. The scan of the flowers make Antonia think Bohemia, where they had the elderflower in the yard. She asked Jim if her father's spirits can go back to those old places. And Jim tells her of feeling he had promised he will one day go back to Antonia's home village. The girls reflect on how the life immigrant is difficult and how they try to help their families. Lena fought to get her mother out of the town. They all play games, and Jim tells the story of the Spanish explorer to the area. The chapter 15, the Carters have to go to Omaha, but before they leave, Mr. Carter put valuable under Antonia's bed and tell her not to leave house at the right while they are gone. Antonia tells Mrs. Barden she feels weary. Mr. Borden thinks it's the best if Antonia's with them and send Jim to sleep. Carter's instead. One night, Jim is awake to find Mr. Carter leaning over him, touching his shoulders, becoming furious, and finding a man in Antonia's bed. The two hit each other, and Mr. Carter has his hand around Jim's neck for a time. But Jim escaped. Jim is badly beaten but begged his grandmother to tell no one. He resents Antonia for his injuries. Mrs. Barden takes Antonia to a college, hurting from the Carter home. And while they are there, Mrs. Carter's arrive in a rage. She tells Mrs. Barden that Mr. Carter put her on the wrong train, telling her to go ahead to Black Hawk, but really giving her a ticket to Kansas City so he could beat her home. Although he could have slipped away with another excuse, Carter tricks her on purpose instead. Mr. Carter enjoyed enraging his wife as much as he ever did, and he looks forward to reckoning with his wife at the end of an escapade. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So that's all from us. Thank you for the attention.